Hi, very good evening to you and welcome. It's Dean from maverickstar Observatory. Guys, in this video we're going to talk about some of the aspects that I've been working on over the last few days with regards to trying to get a better idea and understanding of how fast we can emerge back into a glacial period. There's still a bit of work to do on it because we're working out circumferences of an increase in orbit as it goes elliptical, as you can see in this video. That is going to require quite a bit of mathematics I don't particularly like doing. We're talking derivatives and pi, and we've got to try and measure the radius and the circumference of the change in orbit over time. And just to give you an idea of what's involved, just one orbit within a year around our sun takes 580 million years. Sorry, takes 580 million miles just to make that one orbit around our sun. So we're traveling around about 1.6 million miles a day. Incredible when you think we're doing also on our axis 1,000 miles an hour. So all these things are happening. We're rotating on our axis 1,000 miles an hour. We're orbiting every day 1.6 million miles, and at the end of the year it's around about 584 million miles distance we travel every year. Then on these 100,000 year cycles, which bring in glacial and interglacial cycles, the orbit changes. What we're trying to do is work out how much it's changed already, and I will say this, it has changed more than a lot of people think, and we're going to get into that a bit later on in the video. Before I do go into this a little bit more with you guys and just show you what we're actually trying to effort here, we've got till the end of January, and I know we're not going to clear off the deficit, but what I'm prepared to do is actually chuck in against my partner. I mean, I'm going to end up being divorced there, but against what I said I'd do, I'm going to throw in an extra £1,000 to try to keep our services unchanged in the next coming year. I also want to get this year that's coming, 2022, equipment out into Russia. You know why it's important as well as much as I do. When we find out how much it's increasing by and then compare that by how much it's decreasing by in Canada, we'll have a better idea as to what is going on with the actual tugging movement that is pulling the magnetic North Pole over towards Russia. So if we could just do that little bit more of an effort, like I say, I'm going to put another £1,000 in out my own pocket. If a few of you guys could help, that would be amazing, and the link is down there in the description. So let's get on to what we're actually looking at. Okay, so first of all, if you're new to the channel, over the last month or so we've been looking at interglacial and glacial periods, because what we're trying to work out is why our Earth over the northern hemisphere has put on an extra 2 million square kilometers. It's an absolute massive space. If you go back a few videos ago, you'll see just how big that is. It covers, if we put an area ring over the United Kingdom, it covers the whole of the United Kingdom, and if we positioned it a little bit better, it would also cover some of Europe. So that's just what our Earth has added in 1 month. Sorry, in 1 year, 2021, and it is set a new precedent compared to the last decade that we've been in. Now, of course, when you hear people saying that we are merging into a global warming time period, you have to ask the questions, then why is the ice caps bigger than they ever have been in the last decade? And secondly, wasn't we promised that they'd already be gone by now? People in the United Kingdom would not see snow, but this winter alone we have had 3, where I live in central England, 3 independent snowfalls, which has put a couple of inches on the ground at least. So none of these predictions are coming true, and I want to just show you why that is. Now, there is a lot more going on than what you're actually seeing here. I know this is geared up for CO2, this chart, but nevertheless you can see on the left hand column the temperature chart, or the temperature bar. You can see the 0 degree line going across the middle there, and everything that passes that on the temperature scale on the bottom of the chart is an interglacial period. Everything below that is, sorry, everything above it is a interglacial period. Everything below it is a glacial period. And you can see over the last 400,000 years, we are on the fifth one. Now, first thing to note is, as you can see on this chart, it's self-explanatory. I've tried to simplify this so that, when you are confronted with ignorant people that think it's global warming caused by CO2, this chart should stamp them out utterly. First of all, we see temperature driving climate, not the other way around. The cart is not pulled by the horse. Sorry. Yeah, anyhow. But we can see that first of all temperature rises, then CO2 starts to drive up. When temperature comes down, CO2 follows. Now, you can see that they're almost perfectly separated in cycles of 100,000 years. And that is because of the Milankovitch cycle. That's what we was just looking at, with the Earth orbiting normally and then going into an elliptical orbit. When we move slightly further away from the Sun, obviously, just like the Northern Hemisphere on its natural tilt moves into the winter, it is further away. And then when it's on the other half of the Sun, when it's made 180 degrees around the Sun, and now it's on the other half, it is closer to the Sun. So when we're closer, we get our summers. When we're further away, naturally we get our winters. This also is the case for the Southern Hemisphere. Now, people have been saying, how close are we? Well, NASA thinks that we've only just started to go into this cycle, and that can't be true, because if you look at where zero is on this chart, you can see that we've been into an interglacial period for nearly 12 to 15,000 years. So we are massively overdue, if not already going back into a glacial period. I know what you're asking that question, and we're going to get into it in just a short while. You want to know how fast we can go into a glacial period. Well, I just want to say something. When we was looking at the cycle of the elliptical orbit beginning, so you have 50,000 years from start to finish, but at each end, at the start and at the finish, you have these interglacial periods like we're looking at. So we'll have an interglacial period, which is a warm period. That's when we're closest to the Sun and the orbit's almost spherical, not elliptical. And then when we go further away, the orbit becomes elliptical. And obviously we are in the deepest part of a glacial period. So 50,000 years out and then 50,000 years back. That's what you're seeing on that first video I showed you, us going backwards and forwards, only it's exaggerated a lot. What I want to do is just bring it to your attention that we have been going back into a glacial period. Are you ready for this? For at least 6,000 years. And I believe we may have entered a zone where when we move on that elliptical orbit further away from the Sun, we enter a critical point. It's almost like a thermocline, which is a point where we leave that spherical orbit and we start to see the effects of cooling. Now, I think that is what we have saw in 2021. But what we need to do for you guys is to answer the question, how fast could we go then back into a glacial period? I've got to say this, guys, straight away. I haven't done all the maths. I'm going to speak to a friend of mine who's in astrodynamics so we can get really accurate figures on this. But I think we've already entered that point. I think this year alone shows us that. Not only does this chart show us that, not only does the Milankovitch cycle, where the orbits change shape, shows us that, I think that the climate as well is already showing us that. I just want to emphasize one thing. We have another two problems. Not only are we going through a natural event, which you can see has happened 5 times over the last 400,000 years, we are also going through 2 other anomalies. One, which is even rarer than the interglacial and glacial cycles, the magnetic pole reversal, of course, and we know how that's affecting the jet streams on our planet. It could bring back a next glacial period rapidly, a lot quicker than what we can estimate or expect. That is why I say, it is now a good time to get that little insurance policy for you and your family in terms of a bug out bag and some provisions, and start getting yourself mentally prepared for what you might be witnessing yourselves in your lifetimes. This isn't going to take thousands of years, especially when we have already crossed the minimum point of change in the orbit. We are 6,000 years into it going into the glacial part. So, hold on to your hats, guys. That's all I'm saying. We're going to get some numbers crunched over the next week and hopefully come back with some more accurate figures. But what I am going to tell you is based on some facts. I want to make sure I get the facts double checked. What I believe happens is, that we have a winter and a summer because of the angle of tilt on our planet and its position around the sun at its orbit from 180 degrees from each other. What I think is happening with the Milankovitch cycle is when the cycle becomes more elliptical, we at the equatorial region, which isn't usually affected too much by the angle that we are at to the sun, that in turn moves further away from the sun, and I'm predicting that it moves between 1 and maybe 3,000 miles further away from the sun. I'm talking about the equatorial region, and that is what sets up the next event for us to go into a glacial period, because the orbit has been stretched at that particular point. So we are getting closer to the sun during the elliptical orbit part of the Milankovitch cycle. So, but I want to get some more accurate figures on that. We've got to check the angle of the Earth. We know what the angle is. We've got to check what the difference is in miles, so we get an idea of how far the Milankovitch cycle actually pushes this planet out into the elliptical orbit, and that requires a lot of maths. That's why we're going to probably pick the brains of our astrodynamics champion, one of our friends. So that's where we are. And then on top of that, we've got the effects of the magnetic pole, because that's a rare event that only happens, the last time it happened was 780,000 years ago. Before that, it used to happen every 350,000 or thereabouts years on cycles. So we're 500,000 years overdue. We're going through one of those now. That's a fact. The other thing which is not helping the climate of our planet is the grand solar minimum. And for the last 33 years, the sunspots activities have been dropping off dramatically. That obviously is going to have another effect, not just on the temperature of the Earth, but also with relationship to inflating the heliosphere, which protects our solar system from outside radiation. If the heliosphere is not fully inflated through a healthy and productive sun activity, then it shrinks. So we have a weakened magnetosphere, primary defense shield. We have a weakened or shrinking heliosphere, secondary protection, and we are also, on top of that, going back into a glacial period. It couldn't be any worse, could it, guys? What we're going to try and do here at this observatory is what we've been doing for the last 5 years, and that is getting more equipment out in 2022 than we've got at the moment, and try and effort as best we can what it is and when it will be that we're looking at. And the only thing I want to just give you a heads up on now and put my hand on my heart and say, what, with the magnetic pole reversal, we just don't know. We've got some good ideas based on some good experience, but we just don't know how much it will affect the climate other than what we have seen so far and what has taken place in the last 30 years, since the 1990s at least. We know that the magnetic pole started to increase in distance and speed, and it also has been largely responsible for altering the jet streams in the manner that they are right now, because of the added cloud seeding that it has put up in the jet streams, made them sluggish and therefore fracture, and that's why we're seeing interchange between polar and subtropical jet streams both over the northern and southern hemisphere. So guys, wow, quite a lot to talk about in this video, weren't there? I just want to say, look, I will do that. I'll throw another £1,000 in of my own money to keep things going as normally as possible, but I would love if a few more people come and step forward and give me a hand do that. You know, it's not just about one person. I just want to say one thing. You know what? It was through effort of a lot of people that we managed to build the TriMag system. No one person could have afforded to do that on their own, as well as provide all the other services that we do here at the observatory. And it was because like-minded people come together. Now we've got it. You know, that's over £150,000 worth of bespoke equipment that monitors the magnetic North Pole, let alone the other equipment that we've built and put out in the field. So, you know, without you guys that have already helped, we wouldn't be where we are. And it would be amazing if we could not change the service that we deliver for genuinely people that can't afford to chip in. That's what this is about, and that's why I will put an extra £1,000 in out my own pocket. So it's in your hands, guys. It's up to you. You know, it'd be amazing if we could get a bit more help, and we can achieve a lot more. That's what we've proven already. We've come so far with so little. It would be insane to stop right here. Guys, you have an amazing evening. There's a link down there in the description if you want to help support us, and I'll say what I usually do. Bye for now.